benefits of blended learning are enormous. We could be eventually looking at a paper-free classroom where everything, right from the input to the tasks to the consolidation, the feedback and the assessment, is digitally managed. Paperless approach would definitely make the whole teaching learning process less cumbersome, less resource intensive, more flexible and easy to customize. Managing records will become much easier and it will be possible to trace a student's progress graph over a longer period of time. Students will be able to store their performance record and their assessment results in their personal portfolio, which can be accessed anytime, anywhere. Students will also become digitally literate in a more meaningful and purposeful way. Blended learning makes possible personalization within a standardized framework. So students will not feel neglected or ignored or sidelined. The technological ease will contribute to making the entire learning experience a lot easier. And flexible platforms can be designed in a way, and well, let's not even go to learning platforms. Even if the teacher is creating a simple questionnaire, say on Google Forms, she has so many choices and options of resetting, loading the answer key, generating immediate feedback, shuffling the questions, combining the nature of questions, having audio-based or video-based tasks, and all this from the comfort of her laptop, which the student can respond to from the comfort zone of his or her device which they are using. The student comes to know how he or she has fared and they can immediately address or revisit the concepts they have not understood as feedback is immediate. Blended learning is not expensive at all because all it requires is a device. Most of these tools are supported on a smartphone or a laptop or a desktop and work in Android phones and Windows. Likewise, in terms of managing resources, it is easy for the teacher because everything is online. Everything is on cloud. It is like having a virtual hard disk. The teacher doesn't have to bother too much about managing or keeping her resources safe. Also, documentation and record generation and maintenance become easier for the teacher. Say for instance, if the teacher has saved the list of student emails once, it becomes so much easier for her to share resources with the same group every time. She doesn't have to keep creating new directories or lists. It also allows parents to have a glimpse of the teaching approach and the teaching input and the kind of learning the students are experiencing. It enables parents to keep a track of their ward's learning and the progress which the learner is making. Digital tests allow the teacher to check understanding of the student and revise or revisit the concept. Students can address their shortcomings or revisit the points they have not understood before they come to the classroom the next day to do the extended learning, as feedback of their performance is immediate. Blended learning is paving the way to a new culture of learning and a new kind of literacy, enabling multiple means of engaging with inputs and multiple places where this can happen. It is recreating the learning environment and reconfiguring classroom dynamics. One very significant thing it is bringing about is the dissolution of the centrality of a classroom infrastructure. Teachers need to step up and capitalize on this moment of the monumental change in the teaching learning scene by optimizing the use of technology. What we need to deliberate on is, how can I incorporate blended learning in my classroom teaching? Am I ready to step out of my comfort zone? What tools can I use to make my classes more interactive, more interesting? What can I do to make feedback easier? What are some of the tools that are accessible, user-friendly and available that are currently trending, which I can use and which I can incorporate to make my teaching more effective? What are the tools which will facilitate a flipped classroom approach? What approaches or strategies should I adopt which will make students comfortable and receptive to the idea of blended learning? What activities can I design for my students which can be supported by blended learning so that I optimize on the time available in the classroom and outside the classroom? What could be some of the strategies that will make this approach sustainable and successful in the long run? How will this impact my interaction with my students and my teaching approach in a face-to-face setting? How will I optimize this opportunity of getting to know my students better through this approach? Blended learning encourages even shy and reticent learners to open up and voice their opinions and observations on a particular input because they have had the opportunity to engage with the input previously, and therefore they have a foundation based on which they can build their observations. Blended learning, and especially the flipped classroom approach, allows students to receive information and process it at their own pace so that they are not under an external pressure of meeting an expected level of performance which is normally standardized in a traditional classroom. The key to this approach obviously is planning. To begin with, as teachers, we must first decide how will I manage my time. In a flipped classroom approach instance, how much time do I dedicate to a video lesson and how much to actual classroom interaction? What should be the frequency of meeting students face to face? Since blended learning offers the learner an opportunity to reflect on and introspect, and plenty of time for the input to sink in which cases is blended learning the most beneficial or relevant? Which learning environments will blended learning have a favorable impact on? Blended learning also offers teachers an opportunity to do things differently, communicate and collaborate with other faculty members, and capitalize on each other's strengths. It also takes care of infrastructural constraints like limited availability of classrooms, lack of space, managing a heterogeneous group, etc. The primary thing which the teacher needs to take care of is that the use of technology should not be cosmetic or superimposed on the teaching process. The learning that happens through technology should be integral and organic to the teaching process. Carmen identifies 5 such elements, calling them key ingredients of blended learning. So one is live events. These are synchronous instructor-led events, traditional lectures, video conferences, and synchronous chat sessions such as Blackboard, Collaborate, Adobe Connect or YouTube are examples. The second element is self-paced learning. It refers to experiences the learner completes individually on her own time, such as internet-based tutorial. The third element is collaboration, where learners communicate and create with others. Emails, threaded discussions and wikis are all examples. Assessment is the fourth element, measurements of whether or to what extent learning has taken place. Now, assessment is not limited over here to conventional tests, quizzes and grades. narrative feedback, portfolio evaluations, and importantly, a designer's reflection about a blended learning environment's effectiveness or usefulness are all forms of assessment. Last element is support materials. These include reference materials, both physical and virtual, FAQ forums and summaries. Anything that aids learning, retention and transfer. Griffith University, in its adoption of blended learning, has identified and chalked out 3 modes of technological intervention. Mode 1 is technology for course and resource management. Mode 2 is technology for enriching learner experience, and Mode 3 is technology for supporting learning through fully online courses. This figure that you see is about blended learning possibilities and a blended learning environment in a higher education institution. It brings out the best of traditional and virtual learning. Under online learning and teaching, it looks at options like webcast, recorded lectures, and online virtual classrooms. To facilitate teacher-student interaction, it considers emails, synchronous chat rooms, and discussion forums. As student resources, it offers student calendar, online study guide, web links, and flexible self-paced learning. Assessment can include online tests or collaborative wikis and blogs created by students. Even without a digital learning management system at the organizational level, most of these initiatives are doable and can be incorporated by teachers and slowly embedded in the curriculum after initial trial runs. So, I'd like you to have a good look at this Venn diagram once more and the initiatives in creating a blended learning environment it talks about, and identify the ones you can take up on the basis of the tools we just discussed and familiarized ourselves with. For instance, a student calendar, online assessment, emails, online study guides, and online collaborative work. All of these can be engineered and managed with the help of Google Drive, Google Forms, or Google Slides. So, and then there's more links for collaborative wikis and blogs. For blended learning options, we can consider tools like Snagit or Screen Capture or Jing, which will record your PPT or board work and also your voice. For online resources, we can consider YouTube, TED-Ed, Quizlet to create lessons. All of these resources which I have mentioned are compatible and free, and with a little orientation, one can easily use them to enrich the learning process. However, this module was just meant to introduce you to the possibilities of blended learning and the viability and benefit of a flipped classroom approach. It is not as if this is all. There's more, a lot more than you can explore and experiment with. So let's have a recap of what we did in this section. In this section, we have looked at some benefits of blended learning, some more benefits in fact of blended learning, reflected on how we need to plan a blended learning approach, considered possibilities to enable a blended learning environment at an organizational level, and recapitulated the tools and means we were introduced to in order to incorporate ICT in teaching.